Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the second in our series of Careers in Tech Talks with tech professionals who are sharing their experience for students, educators, and anyone interested in learning more about career pathways in technology and how they got to be where they are today. Thrilled to have Katie Smith, Manager of Cloud Engineering at Fastly, back with us again to serve as today's host and moderator. She'll be monitoring the chat, the chat and also the ask a question portion at the bottom of your screen. So if you have specific burning questions for Jim, please feel free to plug them into there, and Katie will be able to ask them as they pop up. We want to keep this session pretty organic, so please feel free to ask questions as you have them. No need to wait until the end. Jim will talk a little bit about his experience. Jim is a wonderful friend to the Alliance, a fantastic partner. He is a Microsoft MVP and works as a software architect at Insight. So I won't waste any more of your time on screen. And for those of you who do not know me, I lied. I did not even introduce myself. I'm Julie Demers, the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Tech Alliance. So thank you to both Katie and Jim for being here today, and to all of you who are in the audience now and watching this in the future. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. If this is the first session you attended, we're really excited to have you here. We have some great technologists for you this afternoon, starting with Jim. So this is our first annual Pathways to Tech, a career conversation. My name is Katie Smith. As Julie mentioned, I lead a cloud engineering team at Fastly, and I'm really excited to be hosting this event on behalf of the Alliance. If you're not familiar, the New Hampshire Tech Alliance is a statewide technology association that's dedicated to supporting companies, building partnerships, and providing educational opportunities across New Hampshire. And over the last year, we watched as the pandemic made a lot of changes throughout our lives, but I think the most important was in our schools. We've watched students and educators embrace technology in new ways and learn how to work together. So through this event, the New Hampshire Tech Alliance is really hoping to give back to students by providing an opportunity to learn about different career paths in technology and entrepreneurship. So over the next 30 minutes, you'll hear from Jim Wilcox. You'll have the opportunity to ask lots of questions throughout the talk. Please feel free to use the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of the Crowdcast window. And a reminder before we get started, these are all recorded, and the questions in chat are recorded as well and will be shared out after the session. So without further ado, here is Jim.
All right, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to help out. Always happy to help out, talk to people about, careers in technology and where they are, where they're going, and all that fun stuff. So this is very much something I enjoy doing, and hope it'll help. But I'll go ahead and get started here. So let me share that. And okay, so I figured that folks would be interested in hearing about career path that I'm kind of on right now. That things are breaking out into artificial intelligence quite a bit, and without a doubt, one of the biggest driving forces in information technology of the current, I don't want to say necessarily past decade, but definitely the past few years in particular, has really been artificial intelligence. And a lot of people look at artificial intelligence and say, basically, it's too big, it's too nebulous, it doesn't make enough sense, so the thing about it is that it's actually relatively practical, and so that's what I wanted to bring forward is that I am into technology. I'm a software application developer primarily. I roll up my sleeves and help developers build applications, including coding myself, and have been doing that for a very long time. But like I say, the biggest thing driving technology right now is definitely data and artificial intelligence along with it. So to introduce myself a little bit, I am very much involved in community and love to help out. I mentioned that before. I help. I call myself the camp director for Granite State Code Camp. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I also run a couple of different users groups, one around Microsoft.NET development and another one around Microsoft 365 development. And one interesting thing about this particular topic for me is that I am not a data scientist. So all of my experience with artificial intelligence has been from a coder's standpoint. I don't necessarily build cognitive models, but I do apply them in everyday applications and make use of them. So that's basically what I wanted to say about getting started with that. I wanted to introduce a few of our corporate partners. I again work for Insight Digital Innovation, and these are some of the people that we pair up with and help build solutions by, with, and for. And so again, basically a lot of companies are becoming extremely data driven. And if you look at charts, I really tried to nail one down for this presentation, but couldn't find one that really shows it as well as I wanted to. But artificial intelligence is really driving a lot of what's going on in technology. It's all about understanding that artificial intelligence takes a ton of data. The data has to be managed. The data has to be platformed, so you actually have to have a place to keep it. And it's all about data that represents experiences. And so to understand artificial intelligence, you have to understand that artificial intelligence is really about taking experiences like log information. Consider, for example, a device that tracks information about, say, refrigeration units or something along those lines. You get a bunch of information, that the history, the actual experiences of those devices in terms of data and telemetry. You put those together in a way that it can be statistically tracked. And then using cognitive models, you can sort of infer information about things like, all right, when will this unit, need maintenance so that it doesn't break down? Or, what's the likely impact of the weather on this, if you track weather with your experience. So I've got some examples of types of projects that people have built out using artificial intelligence. And there are things like, this is one that Insight won an award for building with Becton Dickinson. Becton Dickinson was our client. The application that we built was their product. They hired us to build it. And basically what this was is a personal health assistant. The idea that the artificial intelligence was a chatbot that people could ask questions to help them manage a particular health issue. In this particular case, it was actually all about diabetes. So these are the kinds of things that you can look forward to working on. And again, you don't have to be a data scientist to contribute to these types of things. Any questions so far? Am I helping out here?
Yeah, this is great, Jim. I have a quick question just for me personally, and I hope it helps others either in the chat or watching the recording.
Okay.
When you're going out and building these different, helping build these applications, what is your role specifically? Are you eyes on code? Are you interfacing with the customer?
So it depends entirely on, how we sell the engagement with the customer. In some cases, I'm working side by side with their team. My typical role is as application architect. I help figure out the best tools and platforms for the technologies that they need to achieve their solution, to help put them together. And then once the architecture is designed and put together, we communicate that with the team, and we all work on building it up. I'll roll up my sleeves and start coding with everyone else. Some cases I end up having to build out frameworks or scaffolding, we call it sometimes, to help make sure that all of the other developers will be able to interface with everything and not be held up by pieces that aren't done yet. So that's a big part of what I'll end up doing. So.
Okay, awesome. That's helpful. And then I know we have a website design class participating live right now. So a quick question on that too is, do you do everything like front end and back end? So like the application design and the frameworks or scaffolding that's behind it?
Yes. So a lot of our developers specialize either front end or back end development. I do a little bit of everything. I've been a full stack developer for a long time now, all the way from, playing with CSS and HTML, all the way down to, tweaking schema and optimizing the database and that sort of thing. But that's not all that common. There's, it's generally speaking, there are people who specialize a little bit more in a focused area. So.
Thank you.
Okay, I will continue along here if there aren't any other questions. So I don't know if anybody's heard about these types of projects, but basically when I talk about experience, the experience can actually be almost any kind of data that you can get into a computer, and that includes, of course, images. And so you can actually take images, and you can kind of see in this slide here where this image has been tagged a little bit. And the idea is that when you denote certain items in a visual image and give a computer enough examples of those types of things, you can you can build up training sets and make cognitive models that can recognize images. This particular project was actually to build out drones that would run down railroad tracks and look for problems. And so in order to get it to understand what a problem is, it had to be taught. And that's one of the big things that the folks in data science do, believe it or not, is tagging lots of images like these. And we'll get into that a little bit more in just a bit here. But this was a really cool project in terms of being able to send a device like this down the tracks and make it so that it saves them a lot of money just from having people do this instead. They can run a few of these devices around on the tracks and have it flash by and recognize these things relatively quickly. So let's see, another common one is patient intake and scheduling. This was for Steward Healthcare, and this also won an award for Partner of the Year in artificial intelligence. And the idea here was that when you gather enough metrics about patient information and their overall stay, you can start predicting when they're going to need different things, or when they're actually ready to to go out, if they're going, if they're at risk of some kind of infection, or like a whole bunch of different things. It all depends on the kind of information that you can include in your training set. So the important part as far as this goes is that there's so many applications that you don't have to be a mega corporation to take advantage of. There are tools and technologies and platforms out there that make it so that for relatively reasonable prices and that sort of thing, you can start taking advantage of the data that you've probably already been collecting for years and didn't know what to do with it. But with that, I will move on to one more example here. So one of the kind of simpler examples is counting. So this is a case of computer vision using artificial intelligence to recognize boxes on a pallet. Now, the idea here is that these companies have warehouses full of products. They occasionally need to do an inventory, and it costs them a lot of money to have a person go around and eyeball all these things and get counts. So what you can do in a case like this is actually take images of these products and train a computer by tagging them to identify boxes and products and sort of interpolate the number of actual items on the product. Now, it's not really possible if you have a lot of irregularly shaped packages or something like that in a heap or something like that. You kind of need them to be stacked in a somewhat orderly manner like this so that an artificial intelligence can figure out, oh, this is, 2 units high or 3 units high and this many wide, and it can infer a few things just based on the metrics of the box. But you can understand, as far as that goes, the counting method itself is a matter of, you take a bunch of training images and you run them through a vision model. You'll have to have a person tag all of these things, and then you can actually, compare that to counts and build out code that provides an answer for you. And so, for example, tagging these images might actually look something like this. Whoops, didn't mean to do that, but there's actually a person who will, for training purposes, training a machine by tagging all the images with rectangles around all of these things like this. And it's also noticed that there's some interesting little details in this. Some of them have the product code showing, some of them are turned around. And then you get the sneaky one over here on the side that you may or may not want to count. And that's a matter of the requirements that the customer has. Stuff like this is stuff that you definitely need to keep in mind, that it should maybe identify stuff like this or keep track of it as some kind of an anomaly. But the cool part as far as that goes is that there's a whole bunch of tools out there to make it so that a software developer can dig right in on these kinds of things without having to be again a data scientist or a data engineer or any of that sort of thing. And I figured that for that purpose I'd show a little bit about like my favorite tools here. So these are cognitive services that I use all the time in the cloud. And basically what you do with these is you spin up a service and add your data and allow it to train from your data, and then you can basically take advantage of different artificial intelligence cognitive models that you build out for it. And so this right here is actually probably a decent set of examples of the types of artificial intelligence cognitive models that you can build. So for decision making, you can have an artificial intelligence cognitive model build out an anomaly detector, which is sort of like the railroad track example of the model, the drone running down the tracks and looking at those. Content moderator. So these are things like you have people in a chat publicly, for example. Every now and again, somebody does something goofy, like shares some personal information. They put out social security number or somebody's phone number or an email address in a public setting that's not necessarily appropriate. So, this can also check for offensive, unwanted content, like somebody posts, some nasty 4-letter words or something along those lines. Content moderation is a training model that you can build out to specifically check for any kind of category of that sort. So, things that you don't want. Metrics advisor. These are things like, you've got that refrigeration unit that I was talking about earlier on, where you want to make sure that all of the refrigeration units are working properly and they're being serviced regularly. And if any of them get out of line, like suddenly the temperature in a refrigeration unit spikes, you can hit this, this metrics advisor will actually recognize that unit has gone out of norms and do the job, of notifying, maybe even trigger automation to figure out what to do about it. It might, for example, start a workflow for a service repair person to come out and take care of it, or maybe start a workflow to run some automated diagnostics or that sort of thing. And you can see that these lists go on, this personalizer that's basically, they have examples of these, believe it or not, in Microsoft Office, where you click a button and it will automatically lay out, for example, a PowerPoint slide for you in a way that artificial intelligence thinks will be visually attractive. So there's all kinds of different possibilities just in that category. The stuff that I use most often is language understanding and Q&A maker. So these are other tools that help you work with, a language. I typically, of course, use English, but they support many other languages as well. To help you, predict a proper response for a particular utterance from a person. If you use natural language to tell some device what to do, that's what language understanding is. Q&A maker is a great tool for, like, if you have a list of frequently asked questions, you can actually train up a Q&A maker model in about 5 minutes and have a useful little chat bot that will create, interesting answers for useful answers for reasonable questions within that set of data. I've done workshops and examples of this in presentations in the past that a lot of fun to show off. But those are the kinds of things that get into speech here and vision. I won't take up the whole presentation time. If there are any questions, I'll take a pause here.
Yeah, a couple of questions for you. The first one is this a good tool for students or people looking to get more involved or learn more about artificial intelligence? And if not, what would you recommend?
So yeah, absolutely. So this is all part of Microsoft's cloud. It's called Azure, and all of these tools you can actually, if your school doesn't have a license to it, you might. All the other cloud providers have their versions of these as well. But the great part about these is, like, especially stuff like Q&A maker. Again, something like that, you can actually build out a cognitive model in probably about 5 minutes if you've already got an FAQ built. So it's a great way to get an understanding of how artificial intelligence typically works, how predictive models typically come back with the probability that the person using this meant a certain thing, or the probability that the image that you present to the artificial intelligence cognitive model is a face, for example, or a particular person's face, or some object in an image or something like that. So these are a great way to get a feel for how to build this stuff out without having to be a data scientist. And there are still other places, other things that you can use if you're really interested in the data science side of things, to get into all that. That's actually another whole branch of tools where you can build out completely custom training models and that sort of thing, full training sets and all that. So any other questions?
Yeah, another one for you is just how did you decide that you wanted to get into, I know you started in like full stack development. What was your decision-making process like?
So really, I have kind of been at it for a long time, and it wasn't totally a decision kind of thing. It kind of grew with the field. When I first started building software, computers were, more or less desktops. They, oftentimes had a server component or a front end component. It may have been relatively simple. It all ran on a PC somewhere or something like that. So I kind of went where the project was. And, over time, I ended up working, on a service that ran in a back-end system on this project and, built out a user interface for that project. So I guess in that sense, my career has kind of evolved. The key component there is that I work for a consulting company, and the company that I work for basically gets hired by other companies to build out their applications. And so that introduces a lot of variability because, you never know exactly what the client is going to ask for, and the solution changes from client to client, and their whole world might be a completely different environment. So, full stack of tools from Microsoft in one, or full stack of tools from IBM in another, for example. So
interesting. It sounds like you've been very agile while you've gone through your learning process.
Yep.
I don't see any other questions for you. If one popped up, I'll definitely ask. But anything else you want to share in the last 2 or so minutes here?
I guess just I hope it helps. One of the other things that might be worth considering also is get involved in community. Again, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I don't know if there's a link anywhere, but if you do a search for me, you'll probably find me. But I do a couple of different users groups that meet monthly, and I also run a nightly, every weeknight. We do what we call the Code Review Nightly, where you can just pop in and talk with whoever's online, with the group, and we'll chat about, we'll talk shop basically. So it's not literally a code review. We just kind of, gave it that name because sort of fits,
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And it was really great to hear. As a data-driven person, I love hearing about different ways we can use these models. So your insight was excellent. And thanks again.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Of course.